Hey, welcome to the Kentucky Derby training show for, what day is it again? I'm Caton Bredar, and I've got Caleb Keller and Geena Lucille with me to track the progress of all the horses headed to the Kentucky Derby on Saturday and the Kentucky Oaks on Friday. And so far, so good as far as the weather and the coverage and the training. Everything has really proceeded pretty smoothly. But for this Monday, I think things really start to pick up in intensity and emotion, and things get a little bit more serious. And certainly the crowds were out a bit more today than I think we've seen up until this point. So I think this is a good opportunity to kind of launch off the final countdown, so to speak. We are going to try to cover a lot of different bases here with both races, but Caleb, I think I want to start first, just your general impressions. I know you were out on the backstretch this morning, and did you feel things had kind of picked up a notch?
Definitely, especially Caton and Geena with the lovely weather out here. We'll hope that this forecast remains throughout the week, but just a pristine Kentucky sunrise, 7:30 a.m. sharp. The Derby horses, the majority of them came out. Some did some work earlier in the morning when the track opened up. So it's been a heck of a morning. I'm also over at the Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers here on Bardstown Road, and stay tuned to FanDuel TV. Maybe a Kentucky Derby winning jockey served me a chicken tender basket earlier.
Bring some for us, please, as well. Along the way.
Cane sauce.
Geena, we don't have much time to talk about anything other than horses, or even think about food or meals or planning. I know you've been out there even before I was out there in the mornings talking to connections, but were there any surprises or anything new that you came upon this morning?
Well, we had a massive Paddock schooling today, and a lot of the Oaks and Derby contenders were walking over there and getting their schooling finalized. But there's about 40 to 50 horses that were flooding in, just getting those preparations. And Todd has had his hands on a couple of them, just giving the last minute horseman type touches that Todd Pletcher is so known for. And I have to say, Dorpita Anna was very confident and bullish in the paddock, but her groom was petting her and keeping her nice and relaxed. So I think that she's going to have a really good paddock time as well.
Well, I think that is what's always most interesting at this point, is to watch how the horses' attitudes and demeanor change as it gets closer and closer to race time, and as they start doing some of those fine-tuning preparations like paddock schooling and gate schooling. And I know we're going to be talking a bit more about that, but let's introduce the Derby field now that we have the post positions drawn and everything kind of in place. I think a lot will be made of Dornoch being on the inside and Danny Gargan's other horse, perhaps a little less regarded, being on the outside, but I don't know if you'd be pleased with either post position. Ideally, Caleb, a lot is made of post positions, but at the end of the day, I think most of the trainers say, it's really not make or break, with a few exceptions.
I think that the 2 Sierra Leone and the 4 Catching Freedom drawing the inside post, you got to imagine that one of them is going to get a really nice trip. So let's see which one of those that is. But at the same time, since this new starting gate has happened, we've seen a couple of inside closers that, the field kind of crushes down towards the inside. And, yes, you are saving ground, but sometimes with that traffic coming across you to your right can make for a tough trip for a closer like Sierra Leone or Catching Freedom.
Geena, I know we've talked a bit about the size of the gate, particularly the gate stalls with the new gate, and that being something that I know with a big horse like Sierra Leone, or a horse that maybe has had some issues behind the gate, can be problematic. Have you seen or heard anything one way or the other?
So Chad said that Sierra Leone has done a phenomenal job with his gate schooling. They've taken him back there, and he is really familiar with the new gates. And yes, Caton, the Kentucky Derby gates were redone, and they're a little bit smaller than the regular gates that they would be used to racing in, which actually tomorrow, if they tune in on X, I will be back there at the gates with Dornoch and Society Man schooling. They're going to be schooling tomorrow for Danny Gargan. So, just to give everyone like a little bit more of insight of how the gates are different. Now, Danny, I was actually sitting with Danny on the draw, And yes, your heart kind of sinks to the pit of your stomach about that kind of stuff, like especially getting drawn on the inside. But honestly, the inside's not a terrible place to be, granted, with the new gates and the lineup to get a nice position for these horses. I've also, I've ridden on this track and gone into that first turn. So getting drawn wide, it's really can also really be detrimental. So the gates are really, of course, post position is key for a lot of the start, but it's also how you break and where your jock can put your horse.
Yeah, individual horses may find themselves in either familiar or unfamiliar, more comfortable or less comfortable territory, just sort of depending. We'll touch on that some more, especially post positions, but we're going to dig into some of the workouts, and particularly the works that we saw yesterday, starting with Track Phantom, who breezed on I don't know that it's an off day, but some trainers opting for Saturday and then others opting for Sunday. Track Phantom, one of them that came up on Sunday. And this work was in company and a little bit different, Geena, than what we have seen, although in some respects it's very typical Steve Asmussen work.
Yes, I mean, here you can kind of see that Track Phantom is sitting off of his workmate, which probably means that he wants to give this horse a bit of a target. And as you're watching him on this screen, just kind of, it's a very even playing type of work. You don't want to over exude a lot of your horse. And here you can see the 5 furlong work there at the bottom, but the horse comes home really nice and does a really good job. You can tell that the jock's not really moving a lot on this horse either, which gives me a lot of confidence in the way that he's just pushing off the ground and he's solid and feeling good, but not using himself too much to take. You don't win any money in the mornings, so it's very important to just get a nice wind in the belly, lift up the belly, and get a nice good work for me.
Caleb, he is going to be equipped with blinkers and worked with the blinkers here. What do you make of that change? I mean, I'm kind of thinking that it's a neat thing. I like the fact that he was able to settle off a horse because he's a horse who naturally shows speed. So maybe the blinkers kind of giving him that extra focus that allows him to settle a little more.
Yeah, I think that the blinkers accentuates his main strength, which of course is his speed. And I really feel that he's the best breaker in this year's field. I mean, this is like a perfect breaker from the starting gate. And, if you watch his last 2 races, when he comes to the top of the stretch, he kind of makes this weird move as he's switching leads where he kind of lifts up just slightly. If the blinkers could iron that out, I think he could take that speed a little bit further. But, of course, you would never see a gate drill this close to the race. But in terms of the gate skills, I love quarter horse racing, so I focus a lot on the gate. And this guy is literally an A+ gate breaker. So I got a really hard time seeing even a horse like Dornoch in front of him. I think Track Phantom will be the leader early in the Kentucky Derby.
We'll get to circle back to that discussion when we take a look at Fierceness, because I think others would think that he would have to be the one that's on the lead. But with the positioning in the gate, especially, and Track Phantom perhaps being the fastest out of the gate, that may force some things with Fierceness being to the outside. Let's go on to another horse, and in fact, a horse that I don't feel like has gotten much discussion. Although, Geena, I know you were, I think, around the Wayne Lucas barn. I know Andy was as well, with Just Steel. Keith Asmussen going to be riding Just Steel for Wayne Lucas. And this breeze, a half mile in 50.40, was interestingly, when I heard Lucas talk about, slower than he would have wanted to see. You don't always hear your trainers, especially at this point in the game, ever suggest that anything is less than ideal, exactly what you wanted. But
yes, I mean, this horse here, Just Steel, is super, super talented. And I actually was not, I didn't go with Andy to talk to the coach about this horse. But, this was, again, a very nice maintenance work. It's really good to just see a nice maintenance work for these horses before the big day. And he really handled the ground like any Derby horse should that's earned enough points to be here, right?
And very different style. Wayne actually worked before this work, Just Steel worked a mile, which I don't know that we'll see from any other of the Derby workers. Caleb, what did you make of it, and as well his chances?
we've seen Lucas go for the mile drills before, and I like how Wayne can tailor a work pattern to an individual. He doesn't have a set regimen that he gives, so he tailors it to the horse. And we know that Just Steel has a lot of racing, but he's a Justify, and Justify was one of the heavier horses to run in the Kentucky Derby. He was about 1250, about 1,250 pounds. Wayne Lucas at Just Steel, the son of Justify, is about 1,300 pounds. So, for him having so much racing, if a big heavy horse can take to the racing, then that's a great situation to be in, because you can kind of get him fit, get him chiseled for how much speed and weight that they truly carry.
Just Steel working the mile, coming back with that half mile work, and you might have noticed no gallop out either. But that's different tricks for different trainers. Wayne doesn't like a big gallop out. He actually prefers the horses kind of shut down after it. He wants the most at the wire. So I always think, Caleb, that's kind of interesting. I think we've got a little technical glitch for Geena, but we'll get back to her thoughts on that as well. We can switch gears a bit to the Japanese horses, which, Caleb, I'm curious to your thoughts about them. T.O. Password is the latest to come on board. Of course, Forever Young has been here a bit longer, coming by way of Dubai. But T.O. Password is a horse that I keep hearing people just throwing out completely because he hasn't raced that much. And I think it's more a case of people not knowing very much about him. He's a beautiful horse. I saw him on the track the first day he came out, and I saw him today. There's a little mishap with his gallop, though. He actually props a bit or swerves a bit because of some stuff on the track or some sights that he caught his eye. But what do you think? I mean, is it an automatic throw out, or do you give some credit to him?
I mean, I'm going to trust the odds that international odds had this horse at 150 to 1. We're talking like almost twice the number as Rich Strike. So the international odds are basically telling us that it's been a possibility for the horse to win the race. Now, we've seen an international horse, like let's say a couple years ago, Summer is Tomorrow. The Dubai horse came in, and even though he finished dead last, he had a key role in the race because, he set the pace that set up Rich Strike. So we're going to show you that funny little move right there at the wire. A bit of an awkward step, but probably just saw a shadow. I can think back to a Richard Mandela horse named the Tin Man. And when he went to Arlington Park to train for the Arlington Million, he would always duck under the suspension camera that was above him. So horses are curious, especially the ones that can look around and see different shadows. But ultimately, T.O. Password, he has some speed, but I don't think as much as Summer is Tomorrow, one of the internationals from a few years ago. So 150 to 1, they're saying he didn't have much of a chance at all.
He is, again, I think just a beautiful looking horse, very well put together. And his pedigree is a very Japanese pedigree. I'm not as familiar with it, but when you dig into it, you'll find all the classics, including Sunday Silence. So he's very, very well bred for the distance, for the classic distances, but he's only 2 for 2 lifetime. So it's also hard to know. I mean, I think he would be the first Derby winner to only have 2 prior prep races. I could be wrong about that stat, but.
Well, I mean, we got to the point with Big Brown, who only had 3, and then Maish, who only had 3, and even a horse this year like Just a Touch. So, like, getting to 3 is now becoming like the in vogue way. Of course, unless sometime in the future, if somebody had a monster and they just entered a maiden into like the Florida Derby to try to win. But I mean, 2 is like the minimum that you could ever get to the Kentucky Derby on, and we're seeing that with T.O. Password, and also the filly coming over there from the UAE Oaks also just has 2 starts.
We will move on to the other Japanese horse who came a very different route and is definitely much more proven. That's Forever Young. And Forever Young, as well as the camp surrounding T.O. Password and his stablemate who came in for the Ali Sheba, are so excited just to be here. I've heard from those who work in the quarantine barn that they every day say, we are honored to be here. We are honored to be a part of this. But Forever Young is battle tested. He's coming off wins in the Saudi Derby as well as the UAE Derby. He is 5 for 5 lifetime. So certainly easier to make a case for him than his partner in T.O. Password.
And I talked with Kate Hunter today. Kate does a tremendous job of translating for the Japanese. She's the liaison of the Japanese racing coordinator here in America. And I asked her about all the travel. And these horses have tremendous travel regimens. They have a travel companion that's with them on these long flights. They got to hit quarantine. And when Forever Young first got to the track, he wasn't necessarily turning heads, but today specifically, I know Mike Welsh, one of the top clockers on Twitter, thought it was his best day. Miles Feld, our cameraman, who's got a really great eye as well, he thought that Forever Young looked well. So he's had plenty of time to acclimate. And today, it seems from the eyes that were on him, was one of his better days of galloping.
Yeah, the tendency, I think, is for something different from what we're accustomed to be dismissed a little bit more easily. But that's not always the right way to go. Just because they train or prepare their horses a bit differently, spend a lot more time on the track, doesn't mean that the talent isn't there. And certainly with an undefeated horse, I mean, I think he represents their best hope to date in the race. Favorite, Fierceness. I touched on the 17 post position, but I don't care what the numbers say. I know everyone going into this thought that Fierceness would be much better off positioned to the outside. Caleb, I think it's a good spot for him to be. And I know he'll have to use a little horse to clear the field, but I think that won't be an issue.
I think it's a fantastic spot. As a matter of fact, remember, 20 years ago when the connections would go up and place their number on the post that they chose. I think if we were doing this 20 years ago, they probably would have chosen the 17. They're exactly how it fell. And there's not a ton of speed around him. Stronghold is solid out of the gate, but not ultra fast. Resilience can have some foot, but not one that's going to run with Fierceness. The 20 has no speed. So he's easily going to come out of that 17 box. And I think that he just follows the number 12 Track Phantom. Now we'll see how aggressive Dornoch gets from the rail. Just a touch. The 8 has some speed. But I think that the read is very simple for Fierceness. You break out, and then you follow Joel Rosario with the number 12 Track Phantom.
Well, he drew post 17, and to date, it's the only number that there has never been a winner from post 17, but there is a lot more to that stat. And Joaquin Jaime actually took a deep dive so far as the stats surrounding post 17 are concerned. We're going to have a lot more on that. You'll learn what that deep dive reveals later today. So you want to tune in to FanDuel TV, FanDuel Racing, to find out about that statistic specifically and how it pertains to Fierceness stances. And Geena back joining us. Although I am hearing you, Geena. So there's a pretty big echo.
Oh, there is an echo.
I think so.
Oh boy, yeah, we're in the media press center and everybody's using all the Wi-Fi. So I'm like, I might have had better luck at Canes.
I'm going to try where Oaksfield is to talk about next as we take a look at it. The field is smaller, obviously limited in size for the Kentucky Oaks, but does not lack the star power, that's for sure. And Caleb, the favorite, Tarfa, lukewarm on the morning line at 7-2, draws post position 8 with Flavian Pratt. I think that's perfect for her. I also saw her on the track this morning. I mean, she looks amazing. She seems to be thriving. And for a smaller filly, she covers an immense amount of ground. She's a real contrast in size to Just FYI, who's just this massive filly who seems like she also is exuding confidence and class every single day.
We mentioned Just Steel being a Justify. Same thing with Just FYI. I mean, these horses have so much size and strength and power behind them that they're very uniquely built. And in terms of Tarfa, when she won at Keeneland first time out, you're thinking, wow, this is a surefire superstar. But her only loss came in the only race at Churchill Downs. And I think that kind of moved her stock downward. And then she was a better price at the fairgrounds and won. And then she won again. So, for Tarfa, she's kind of the forgotten horse. She's had plenty of time to prep. And since then, we've seen Torpedo Anna and Ways and Means and even Power Squeeze run big races. So Tarfa, her stock has kind of gone like this. I mean, first start, she was a can't-miss superstar. Then she was defeated and finished 4th at Churchill. Then her stock went down. Then she's won the last 2, but then other horses have emerged in the weeks since. So Tarfa, her stock chart looks really up and down to me.
I agree. I think right now she's heading on an upswing. It'll be exciting to watch her, though. But spent a lot of time at the barn this morning with Bill Mott and watching Resilience, his Kentucky Derby hopeful, as well as Just FYI. And I have to say, I mean, just FYI, is the type of filly that when you look at her, she turns heads. Just walking around the barn, you know she's something special. And she was out on the track this morning with a real light jog, coming off of her workout. She just had one lap and schooled in the gate a little bit, along with resilience. But her work on this also on Sunday, 428, was, I think, exactly what you want to see from a horse going into the biggest test of their life.
And even though she finished second in the Ashland and somewhat soundly defeated there by Leslie's Rose, it still was a higher speed figure than when she won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. So that's obviously a good sign. One really interesting factor, Caton, about this year's Kentucky Oaks, if you think back in recent years, who were horses that went to the Oaks off just one prep race? And really, one just comes to mind, Echo Zulu. You know, Echo Zulu was the 2-year-old champion. She had a couple setbacks, missed a start, and then she had one race in the Fairgrounds Oaks, which she won. And then she went to the Kentucky Oaks and ran a good enough fourth. This year, just FYI, only one start. Ways and Means, only one start this year. And Torpedo Anna, just one start. And even if Candied somehow got into the race, she only has one start. So 4 major contenders, including the horse we're looking at right now, with just one start as a 3-year-old filly.
That it is pretty remarkable. But I think could turn out to be a blessing in disguise that she ended up not in the prep race she was originally planned for. That did cause Bill Mott to train her workout schedule a little bit differently. This workout was a half mile on 428. She did it in 49 and 2. And what I thought is most remarkable is when you look at her, she doesn't look like she's going very fast. I mean, she does it. To me, that's a sign of a really, really special horse. When they look like they're going slower than the stopwatch says, she just does it quite easily. But it wasn't too long before on the 22nd that she had that really serious work where it was the best of the morning for 5 furlongs in 59 and 4. So she's kind of sitting on go and was actually a little tough trying to run off with one exercise rider the first few days of this year. And then they switched up riders and everything has pretty much gone exactly according to plan. But Bill mentioned that in his experience as an exercise rider, when you get to Churchill, a lot of horses get a lot tougher, just more keen in the morning. And I asked him if he thought it was just because of the configuration of the track. And he said he really thought that it was more because that grandstand is just so immense that it's a different environment than any other track you're at previously, that when you hit the top of the stretch, everything just seems very imposing and very serious, and it can get horses a bit more on the bridle and digging in, and that's what you've seen from her. But he seems glowing about how just FYI is doing going into the race. Our Pretty Woman, another Oaks contender, is also out on the 28th for a breeze for Steph. She's still on the outside looking in. But Caleb, I hope she gets a chance to run. Not that I want anything to happen to anyone else in the field, but I really thought this filly was an improving filly who would have a big shot. She was the runner-up in the Fairgrounds Oaks, and I think she has a lot of upside.
You know, an expensive filly that pushed Tarfa in the Fairgrounds Oaks. A little bit similar in my mind as we're going to see this work. A little bit similar for Our Pretty Woman to Disarm last year in the Derby, both for Asmussen. Both we knew had a lot of talent. Both had a really bright future, and also both were just a little light on seasoning, and things weren't as easy to get to the big race because of either setbacks or just inexperience and being lightly raced. So I think down the line, even to a race like the Distaff later on this year, with the price tag, with the speed, with the connections. But as for this race, if she did draw in, wow, what a tough assignment. She just got the lead in the rail at the Fairgrounds, and now she'd have the all the way outside box in a field of 14, giving up experience. So I really like the future for her, but this would be a real tall assignment if she does draw into the race.
Geena, she certainly is training in the same fashion that most Steve Asmussen horses, particularly the good ones, do, with that very nice, easy, long rein and kind of floating over the ground, but doing it well in hand.
One thing about Our Pretty Woman is she's such a long filly, and she has, when you have a long filly and you're riding something like her, you need to give them room for movement so that you don't tighten up their back and tighten up their underbelly, and they need to be comfortable. And one thing that I really love about Our Pretty Woman is the power and the alignment from her ears to her butt. She's so well balanced right now. I believe she is in her best form that we are going to see in her 3-year-old career.
Our pretty woman on the outside looking in, if there is a defection, she would move into the gate for the Kentucky Oaks on Friday. Talked about Tarfa as the favorite. We'll take a look at her galloping this morning post-workout. And well, she's like a little stick of dynamite, I think. It was interesting, Geena, because I think they were trying to kind of restrain her a little bit and get her to settle in her workout. She wanted absolutely no part of it. And you can see she is ready to go anytime you would ask her in the gallop.
One thing about Tarfa, now we are getting a clear shot of her hind end. Look at how powerful this filly is. Look how much she really pushes off. And I said this before, the way that she is built is like very like a torpedo, you know? And she is a stick of dynamite. She has a lot of personality, and she doesn't really like to be told what to do. And, you know, we saw that her last work with Jinjin. Jinjin was on the inside and Tarfa was sitting off of her, and they were trying to get her to relax, and Tarfa wanted no part of it. She was like, nope, I want to go. I'm a racehorse. I mean, I get goosebumps about it because of how just dominant. She's just a powerhouse boss woman. And that's her.
Caleb, the Fairgrounds road to the Kentucky Oaks has been a very good one to travel with so many of the winners coming from there. Do you feel like this year, particularly with Tarfa, that we're looking at another one of those instances?
I think so. You know, 2 starts ago, she beat Intricate at Intricate's best. And then last time she beat Our Pretty Woman when Our Pretty Woman had everything go her way. But I really feel that this is one of the most competitive graded stakes races in terms of betting that we're going to see all year. Okay, so you got 14 horses. There's a slight case to be made that 5 different horses could go favorite. We know Tarfa could go favorite. She's been the most consistent this year. Leslie's Rose, I mean, she's coming off the best number, the best race for the best connections, Pletcher and the reigning champ, Jockey and Irad Ortiz Jr. Just FYI is the established champion who looks well in the morning. She needed her last race. They said Torpedo Anna might be one of the better horses that McPeak's had for fillies. And in ways and means, everything's been said about her going back to Saratoga. So there's a slight case for 5 different horses to be a favorite in a Grade 1 race.
Let's talk about Leslie's Rose since you brought her up and take a look at her galloping on the track this morning. She's another, Caleb, that everybody was sort of talking about this morning, just as far as she's kind of an eye-catching type of filly.
Okay, so Todd Pletcher, when I talked to him over the weekend, he was trying to drop a little bit of a traffic excuse for the loss at 1-5, basically at Gulfstream Park. So they thought there was an inside seam, wasn't there, got shut off. But we know that she came to life there at Keeneland. Now, the outside post, the 14, that's like been the place to be. Abel Tasman was the 13. We had last year's winner, Pretty Mischievous, was the 14. We had Serengeti Empress was drawn at the 13 post. We had Catherine Sophia was the 12 horse. Like, so many Oaks winners have been 12, 11, 13, 14 here in just the last few seasons.
Geena, that ear, I love to watch her ears when she goes because she's always got one cocked. It's as if she's like just waiting for somebody to give her a signal to do something different and be able to do a little bit more.
She is. She's a very manageable filly, and she's the complete opposite of Tarfa, right? She's very, what can I do for you? How can I help you? And you can see she's just a very pleasurable filly to ride, and that does help a lot in the afternoon when you have a horse that is really well suited to their rider and listens to their rider. And you know, that's apart from the awesome post position that she drew, really setting up for her for success and her mental ability. She's such a smart, classy filly with talent.
Well, Caleb has to get the chicken fingers and see what's going on with the jockeys in terms of serving. I need to get over and join you, Geena, over in the backstretch to get some coverage again from the rest of the afternoon. And of course, we'll have some racing coverage coming up back on FanDuel in just a minute, but always fun to chat Derby and Oaks, and I'm sure we're going to be doing it a lot more over the coming days. In the meantime, thanks everybody, and I'll see both of you very soon.